Yeah, it's significant. Parking in the garage, and no one's knocking parking in the garage. It's
No, plus I'm saving a couple bucks at
quite.
the show.
Would you? Well, let's talk about this when the cameras go on. Judah Wickower, we can start the program when you're ready, my friend. Good Wednesday morning, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith here on the I Love CVille Network. We have a Charlottesville-wide, Albemarle County-wide, Central Virginia-wide, Commonwealth-wide, country-wide, and worldwide audience. And the most important viewer and listener is you, the one that wants to get engaged with today's program. A lot we're going to cover on the Wednesday edition of Real Talk, presented by Ross Mortgage.
Yeah, Ross Mortgage and Realty Partners.
And Scott Mortgage Morris.
Who's out fishing.
Who's fishing right now
Good
and enjoying the fruits of his hard work. Judah Wickower is our director. We'll get the studio camera in the mix, Judah, before we go to the two-shot over there. And let's welcome Casual Keith to the program.
Casual Keith, who got lucky and got two on-street parking spots. You know, it was funny on Monday's show, our body language and our chemistry is such that stuff. That look that you just gave me was, okay, Smith. You know, have a sip of coffee.
Get some coffee. Get cracking, baby.
Cracking, baby. Yes, sir. So look, I don't really have too much on the topic for today. You know, everybody knows we need inventory. Everybody knows this, and everybody knows that. And we're not supposed to use that word.
We're not supposed to use that word.
I know.
What does Miss Smith want us to use? Severely under-rooftopped.
No, I don't think that was it.
I think that was something like that.
Yeah, anything other. There's two words she doesn't want me to use.
Pivot.
3 words. Pivot. Inventory and recession.
Okay.
Right. So, which we're probably going to talk about the third one a little bit today. But I just kind of wanted to open the show up a little bit. You said something on Monday, and I've received a couple of direct messages since Monday. I don't know if the word thanking is the right word, but just giving me a bit of kudos for being so open. Props, thank you, for being so open about things, right? And our lives and what has happened and how we recovered from them and how we went on. So, I just thought, we've kind of lost, we lost everything we had twice in our marriages, in our life, in our 36 years together. The first time was in 1992, and then the second time in the time of great unpleasantness. And, and the DMs that I was receiving was, well, how did you do that? So maybe we'll talk a little bit about
Let's talk about it. We'll talk about
that today.
Keith Smith, Jonas Smith, principals at Yes Realty Partners. Many that watch the program know that Keith, when he's in front of these cameras and this microphone, is an absolute open book. Keith Smith wears his heart on his sleeve.
I don't have
what you
sleeves today.
see is what you get. He wears his heart on his casual Keith attire. Look at the screen. Oh, I saw the V-Sabres.
This was a gift from a friend.
It's a good-looking shirt right there. But those that do watch the show realize or know or have listened, they've heard, they've watched as Keith has told or hinted or explained that he's lost, along with Yona, everything they've had twice in their marriage.
Yeah, sure.
He's a developer, has a Class A contractor's license, did a lot of rooftops in Lake Monticello, and as he said on the program, when the time of great unpleasantness, the housing crash of 2008,
I'm going to call that a depression. That was not a...
He was very much in the middle of this.
Yeah,
So
sure.
where do you want to begin on this?
Yeah, so, I don't want to oversimplify it. A very dear friend of mine said, I'd rather be lucky than good any day of the week. And there's a lot of luck involved in it. But there's also just kind of, there was this 3 things that we kind of constantly hit in order to get out of there. Don't make any excuses, right? The first time I broke my back in 92.
So in 92, when you broke your back, how did that lead to losing everything you had?
Because, again, not making excuses, back in the day, workman's comp, as a business owner, you don't have to get workman's comp. And I was literally 29, about ready to turn 30 when that happened. And I just was out of the Marine Corps. And of course, bullets bounce off of you. And I said, I want to save the money. I'm not going to do it. So I actually fell off a roof. Fell off a scaffolding. I was checking a job on a Sunday on that end of it and fell 18 feet and compressed on my T8, 9, and 10 on that end of it. And we didn't have cell phones back in those days. I had to crawl up to my truck, dial 911 from my truck to go ahead and get it. And the second time, was the time of great unpleasantness. But, both times, just to put it a little bit in perspective, the first time, Jerry, I was 30 years old. I had a 6-year-old daughter. My thinking was the only way that I can make a living at that point in time was actually physically working, and now I couldn't. I was laid up for a year and a half, but since I didn't have workman's comp, all the medical bills came due and wiped us out. And thank God for family and all that stuff. And the second time was a little bit different, but there's 3 basic things, right? Don't make excuses.
Yeah.
Own it and communicate it. Right? And I guess that's what we're doing a little bit now on that end of it. But, an excuse, the way I look at it, an excuse is just a story one tells themselves, right? Some people say it's a lie.
Let's talk about the feeling of vulnerability, maybe hopelessness, maybe fear, laying in bed with a broken back in 1992.
Yeah, and by the way, I did it again in 2004. So
another ladder?
Yeah, I do things in pairs.
Don't go on ladders.
No, that was ice skating. I've never told you that story.
You've never told me that story. I also have been told to remind you not to run anymore.
Or go on scooters.
Or go on scooters. Or ladders. Or ice skating.
No. The ice skating was a 12-year-old boy kicked my butt. I was taking my youngest daughter ice skating, and he fell behind me at the old ice park, and was losing control. And he thought if he fell to the ground, he would stop. Instead, he hockey pucked, took his legs out, and I split my C6 and C7 in half. It took me a year and a half to learn how to walk that one again. But we didn't lose everything we had because we had systems in place and so forth and so on. But
you're laying in bed. It's 1992. You have a 6-year-old daughter. You're not working. The medical bills are coming in fast and quick to the mailbox. You realize that they're snowballing and you're getting behind. What's going through your mind then?
So
you're 30 years old.
The weight on that is immense. And again, I'm an open book. To say that I was thinking I didn't want to be around any longer would be a lie.
Okay.
Right? It's the weight is immense. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my businesses. I'm going to lose all this kind of great stuff. It's just an immense weight. So that's why I always say, I think we're in a recession right now because to certain people, certain circumstances, they're in a recession right now, right? Maybe the geniuses are not saying, the PhDs because we haven't hit the second quarter and all that crap.
Yeah.
To certain people, man, we're in a recession.
No doubt. Right. And that's coming out of a pandemic.
And coming out of a pandemic.
So some bad after some real bad.
So how do you, again, a lot of it is who we are, right? A lot of it was, family encouraging me, wife that's off the charts, perfect and gorgeous. But, I would say both cases, very short period of time, I felt sorry for myself. AKA made excuses. But, it's easy to lay there in bed and blame everybody else but yourself. Ultimately, that was my fault. Ultimately, I shouldn't have got up on that ladder. Ultimately, I shouldn't have walked across it was a 2x10 board that had a freaking knot in it that it should have never been there. I knew it. I walked across it. It broke. It was just, I'm not blaming the 2x10.
Yeah.
It was me. I'm not blaming the implosion of the housing market. I made some pretty bad decisions. Talk about heavy weight on that second time around. This didn't just impact me, and it impacted my mother and father. It impacted my family.
How so?
Well, we were all business together, right?
This is 2008, 2009, 2010. Family business.
When we were losing everything, they were losing everything. concurrently. You know, that was a big thing that tackled, that attacked everybody, that everybody had a feeling to it. But we didn't make excuses, right? We just, you know, I made some bad mistakes, learned from them, but I didn't say, as we have our 3 rules here, I didn't point, this was this fault, and kept on blaming it. I put that in a box and said, okay, we're not going to make that mistake again. We're going to get better. And the second part of it is you've got to own it. You know, I'm doing it right now. I'm owning the mistakes that I made. I'm not blaming something else. It was mistakes that I made. And then the third thing is you got to communicate it, right? You got to communicate it to the people that you love, the people that you care, in the community in whole. I tell this story all the time. In 2009, I ran for elected office. I was literally in the middle of it. And if anybody's ever went through I would never want to wish this on my worst enemy. Not that I have any, but you know, you would have, you know, there was lawyers going to my kids' school trying to deliver documents to them, right? It was, you're going in front of, it just was an immense personal thing. But I ran for elected office. In the middle of doing all this stuff, I did that, and I remember the gentleman I was.
You ran for elected office in the middle of being overextended during the housing crash of 08, 9, and 10.
I ran for elected office in the middle of losing everything we had, going through, you know, unless you ever had a banker, a lawyer, you know, there were sheriffs that were coming up to the house giving warrants and debts. It was very, very intense on that end of it. Again, I didn't make any excuses. I owned it. I stood tall. I said, okay, but I ran for elected office. Literally, it was a 2-year, that's 3. It was a 2-year process to go through between 2008 and 2010 before it got finished. Finally got finished on that end of it, and I ran for office. And the guy I was running against kept on saying, at a debate actually, you're in the middle of losing everything. Why are you running for office? And I said, I didn't know there was a rule. Nobody told me there was a rule. I couldn't do this. But, you know, I didn't cause it, but I also didn't make an excuse. And I was out communicating to everybody. And now, you know, fear is an interesting thing. We've been doing this show for how long?
Judah, how long?
3.5 years.
Christopher Eagle, hello, buddy. I'd say
3 years.
Real Talk with Keith Smith, 3.5 years.
Yeah, we're at show 300 and something. I can't remember
Yeah.
on that end of it. But we've been doing it for well north
For a long time.
Well north of 3 years. And I remember in the beginning, right? People were telling me not to do this. This wasn't a good idea. This was you remember this,
Yeah.
right? You were part of it, and there was fear. People were making excuses, right? You know, people didn't, you know, want to own it, and they weren't communicating, you know, on the end of it. So I didn't make any excuses. I owned it. I communicated it, and you know, we're out for show 300 and something.
Almost 4 years into this. I think Judah may have found a timestamp for us. When you do, give us a 2-shot and jump in, or a 3-shot with a little mic action on that.
So I didn't want to go too deep in the end of it.
I'm glad you did.
But
Danny O'Day, hello.
But there was, I want to pay respect to the half a dozen of folks that said, hey, so how did you do this? I know what I just explained was simple, was easy to explain it. Trust me, it wasn't easy to go through.
Which one was the more challenging of the two?
Of the 3, actually.
Wow.
The excuses for me was very quick, right? I stopped blaming other people, all right, and what are we going to do to fix this thing? And owning it, the excuses and owning it. The communication of it was hard. That's the hardest part of it.
With Yona or with extended family?
Well, you got to remember, particularly in number 2, in the time of great unpleasantness.
2008, 2009, 2010.
I'm connected to everybody. Elected officials, state officials. And a lot of these people I still have relationships with, right? Subcontractors, their family, vendors, bankers, lawyers. You know, we talk about this all the time, that, you know, the reason why the economy was doing so bad during the time of great unpleasantness is the real estate ecosystem touches everything.
Yep.
So I'm in that everywhere. And so now I've got to communicate this. I've got to stand in front of Jerry and communicate and stand tall and communicate, hey, I'm not making any excuses. I'm owning this, right? I'm here. Say what you got to say. I'll take the bullets and the slings and the arrows. Stand tall. Not going to make that mistake again. Build trust again. Trust is a hard thing to, and that's probably maybe the fourth bullet, which I didn't write down, is rebuilding trust. That's a hard thing to do. It takes time. And, you've got to just stay in there and do it. So it's easy to, it's maybe as difficult for people to talk about. It's easy for us to talk about it here, to go through it. Somebody who may be going through this or has to go through this, all I got to do is suggest to you is don't make any excuses, own it, communicate it, and start building trust back up.
Catherine Dabney, hello, welcome to the program. Judah Wickhauer will welcome you with the 3-shot, and you can let us know when the first Real Talk with Keith Smith aired here on the I Love CVille Network, my friend.
But we start.
First episode I've got is May 3rd, 2019.
May 3rd, 2019.
So we're
talking 3 years and change.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we had a couple before we did that.
With Yona.
With Yona on the I Love Charlottesville before we started doing that. So again, it was, why are you doing this, so forth and so on. And anyway, I this is my way of saying thank you to these half a dozen folks. Thank you to the sponsors. But, that's how we got through it.
Dan Pettit watching the program. He's got kind words to you here. Nice to see Judah today. Were the kind words for Keith from Dan Pettit. We love you, Dan Pettit. We love the kind words for Keith. The kind words for Keith are nice to see Judah from Mustache Dan Pettit right there. We love you, DP. I hope you have some court time today, Dan Pettit.
Oh, he's probably down at the beach if I know him.
All right, so my friend, you what'd you learn about yourself over those 2 broken backs, man? 2 broken backs, Judah, for the distinguished gentleman. And one...
Apparently not too much, because I went...
Dude, when you said you were going to run the 10-miler, I'm like, this man is bananas. I'll tell you, one of the qualities that is your biggest strength and your biggest weakness is stubbornness.
I prefer the word persistence.
Stubbornness. You, my friend, are a very stubborn person.
Mrs. Smith would totally agree with you.
Very stubborn person. You're very, but that's one of the things that makes you great and is one of your strengths.
I know about great.
I have seen in the 3 years that we've worked alongside each other, the
the old saying,
really caused some issues, though.
You know the old saying, there's no sense being Irish if you're not stubborn. So
is that the saying?
No, but I just made it up.
Or my wife is Irish, and she could be quite stubborn from time to time.
Oh,
she would say that. She would agree.
Even if she says,
she would agree.
Jerry, let me give you a little 36 years of marriage advice.
We have this conversation all the time. This is one she will not regret hearing.
Okay.
She's probably chuckling over coffee right now.
There you go. Well, we have to give her something that she can actually chuckle a little bit harder on that end of it. But yeah, so the question is what's the one thing that I learned?
Yeah, what'd you learn?
Persistence, right? And like you said, it's probably, or stubbornness, whatever you want to call it, but it's probably persistence on it. And actually, I've kind of got these little 7 fundamentals that we can talk about a little bit later. We've been talking about the market shifting, and we're calling it O-shift, and in a little. I mean,
you saw the data released this morning, right?
Oh yeah.
Mortgage demand at a 22-year low.
Yeah, sure. Well, correct. And the market is shifting. And one of the great things about being part of Keller Williams Alliance, our partnership that we have with Quinton, is that we get some of these great resources. Gary Keller wrote this great book called O-Shift. And he has some different fundamentals. These 7 fundamentals that I use, the learning the fundamentals from Gary Keller and what he does out there is great. But these are 7 that I learned myself through how did we kind of get through these 2 great time of unpleasantness, losing everything we had. And part of what I'm trying to do here is educate a little bit, because it's coming, guys. It's the shift is coming.
What's your prediction of what's coming? What's on the horizon?
Well, I think what's happening on it is more of a balance, right? That's and everything. There was an article I read this morning on.
This is the Inman article?
No, it wasn't Inman. This was on HouseWire.
Okay.
HouseWire. But anyway, and again, we got to come up with a different word for inventory.
Yeah.
But
We can say rooftops.
Rooftops.
Okay.
Homes for folks to live in.
Okay, that's a
right?
mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
Okay.
Inventory is a better word.
Inventory is a better word. But we're not saying it.
We're not saying it. We are not saying the word inventory. You are not hearing
Just lie.
the word inventory. You know, there was a
Houses for people to live in.
There's a house of people inventory. So there's a great joke about Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was so smooth. He could say, "You don't see me. I'm not here." You know, he was so smooth. He could tell you something.
Yeah.
And even if it was plain in your face, he would absolutely believe it. That man is as smooth can be. But you know, look. The word that we're not using, inventory, that we're going to continue to use because we can't come up with another word for it. And please, somebody chime in who can come up with a better
Danny
word.
O'Day, you're a wordsmith.
There you
Danny
go.
O'Day is a fabulous author.
There you go.
What other word should we use for inventory? And specifically, tight inventory,
Yeah.
which is the market we live in. Christopher Eagle. What do you suggest? Catherine, Grayson.
So this Inman article was put together with 100 and something economists. Or maybe that was.
I think that was the Inman article.
That was the Inman article.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I read that this morning. So it was a couple of hundred. There was 100 something economists. The long story, the short version of what we've been talking about forever on here. Market's going to balance, right? This word inventory that we can't come up with a second word for is going to start increasing a little bit. We're starting to see it a little bit. But there's such a pool of buyers, it's just going to balance out. There is no quote-unquote bubble from my perspective. And not even my perspective, but these 100 economists that, you know, are pretty
Okay,
sharp.
we agree that there's not a real estate bubble on the horizon. And why we agree why there's not a real estate bubble is because the massive amounts of equity people have in their homes, they're not utilizing their homes as piggy
We just
banks,
didn't build enough houses.
pulling
That's-
HELOCs against them. There's a very shortage of rooftops. We'll see what Danny O'Day, DOD, comes up with a word. Travis Hackworth in Danville says livable stock. Danny says Keith's home for folks to use is pretty great and thinks that's awesome. And I think he sincerely means that.
Yeah.
Danny O'Day is a very straight
Yeah,
shooter.
home
Homes
for
for
folk.
people to use.
Yeah, to quote my dear friend Anthony Harrow, how do you fix homeless? Put them in homes.
Dan Pettit says Jonah has taught you well. Grayson says, Keith, that was touching. Thank you for leading the show with that. Jennifer also concurs. I'll relay what I was about to say. We have homes that have significant equity in them because
Sure.
they've had massive appreciation over the last couple of years.
Sure.
We have owners of those houses who have not utilized their houses as piggy banks with home equity lines of credit, which is what we saw in 2008, 9, and 10. We understand that the real estate market is not the bubble we face. I'm curious if there's other bubbles on the horizon. And Judah, I want your take on this, that you're fearful or mindful of. I'm not concerned
So
economically.
other than housing.
Yeah, I'm not concerned economically, Judah or Keith, with housing. I think housing is a good spot,
Oh, I agree 100%.
except for folks that are trying to get into housing as
So
first-time
on the
homebuyers.
macro level, right, as we started before, right, I think we're in a recession because if you can't find a home and your rent's going up, right, double digits every year, fuel is approaching $6, or they predict $5 low nationally. I think you're going to see it climb a little higher than that. Food is going up, which was worse than food. You can't find anything.
I think so. Real estate's not the bubble. Is there a commodities bubble? Is there a labor bubble? Is there a bubble associated with
So a labor bubble would insinuate that we have, it's the opposite. right?
over leverage? Is there a labor issue associated to lack of labor? Neil Williamson, per Merriam-Webster, synonyms for inventory: budget, forced, fund, pool, repertoire, reservoir, stock, and supply. Danny O'Day, if we're talking about a looming recession, we've got to talk about food affordability.
Oh, yeah.
That's another one that I want to highlight. That was my commodities bubble.
Yeah, but Okay, so a bubble implies a popping, right? So this is not a bubble as much as it's an inflationary problem, right? So I think we need to define what a bubble is for this conversation.
All right, maybe bubble's not the word we should utilize. Is there an avenue
Crisis?
avenue of life that is on the cusp of crisis?
So we know there's a housing crisis.
Okay.
Right? So you're looking for, is there anything else out there?
But I don't think the housing crisis we're in, and jump in here, please. I don't think the housing crisis we're
Macro,
in
100%.
is going to impact negatively the economy.
So the recession that's coming, because it's coming, right? If you read this Inman article, every one of these economists say it is an impending recession. Again, Yona doesn't want me to use that word. She wants me to use an adjustment or some other.
I mean, it's a recession.
It's a softer word, but
Yeah.
it is what it is, right? We're already recessed the first quarter, right? We're probably not going to do the second quarter, right? I think you're going to see it bounce back and forth. I think the technical definition of 2 consecutive negative GDPs.
GDP.
Thank you. P. Thank you. Is probably not going to ever happen, but we will be recessionary. It's going to do this up and down, and it's just not my words. These are pretty smart people.
What is the housing? What is the avenue of life that you're most concerned about pulling this economy down? Is it food? Is it housing? Is it gas? Is it commodities? Is
I
it
think
this
it's
war? Is it credit? Is it overextended households? Is it labor shortage? I mean, there are a lot of them.
I think credit card debt's going to become a big issue here.
Households in America are accumulating more credit card debt now. The data reflects that. What are you concerned about?
Yeah, I think people are going to start having to make choices between which bills to pay, and they're going to eat, and they got to drive. So, I don't think this indicates a housing bubble, but I think there are going to be people that are going to be,
This may be an
defaulting.
unpopular thing to say, or not unpopular, but I don't want to sound. I started off the show very personal, right?
Yeah.
Right, and we are personal people, right? We communicate. This is how we make our living. This is what makes us. This is what makes us human, right? How we communicate with one another. From a macro perspective, and I may be wrong, the time of great unpleasantness really hit our industry hard, which by the sense that the fact that we spider into everything, our industry, the housing industry spiders into everything, it impacted everything. I do not think and I think this is the point you're making, I don't think this next impending recession or downturn is going to impact housing that much.
That's the exact point I'm making.
It's going to impact real estate agents.
I think it's going to impact the people that were, realtors.
It's going to.
I think it's going to impact first-time home buyers.
It's going to impact people in the food chain.
Yeah, I think it's going to impact people that are living pretty darn close to the financial margin.
Well, I'm talking about in my food chain, right? In the housing food chain. And this is part of why I've been trying to focus on this shift for other real estate agents to do that. But
I think you're going to see a good chunk of your colleagues stop doing the work that they're currently doing.
So let's
right
talk
now.
about the time of great unpleasantness, because I know I lived through it, right? In the construction side of thing. But that's what happened. Everybody left, right? Everybody left the business. They went. Judah was the drywall guy, right, or person, right? And Judah, it went away, right? I think you could do good drywall work, by the way.
Judah could do good
Actually,
drywall.
I believe you could actually do that.
He was patching some holes in the Macklin building earlier this week
There you go.
to get it ready for a new tenant.
Should I go inspect it?
Yeah.
Just don't get up on any.
You don't want me to.
Just don't get up close with the flashlight and look at the detail too much.
I used to drive the drywall guy nuts because I used to walk around with an halogen light.
Yeah, and look for
at
cracks.
that. But the point was, Judah in the time of great unpleasantness went to work for Walmart distribution center, making whatever that person made, had benefits, out of the weather, wasn't sucking drywall dust all day long, and then all of a sudden. And this is kind of what got us to where we are now with this housing problem. Not only what we're missing inventory, homes for people to live in, right? Because things weren't getting approved. The industry never came back.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I think about
I bet
often,
I bet you just keeps you up at night.
No, it doesn't. No, this doesn't keep me up at night. Rarely does anything keep me up at night.
You're very lucky, my friend.
Thank you. So this is the kind of stuff that I think about. So, and I'm very curious of what you take. This guy,
He's a smart dude.
I really consider what Judah has to say.
Well,
Over
not
10
only that,
years
but
of
the people
working
that watch the
alongside each
show
other.
say, "Hey, can Judah chime in?"
10 years. I appreciate and respect his perspective. So here's what I'm going to throw. Look at the spaces of business where the labor force is in a vulnerable state.
It's all of them.
Food and beverage, no doubt.
Construction.
Construction. Look at the realtors. If they don't have inventory to sell, how do they keep being realtors?
So are you talking about the amount of people in the space? The
No,
workers
I'm
in the
talking
space?
about the vulnerable nature of
Got
the
it.
work they do. Food and beverage right now.
Yeah,
the
they
food- the-
absolutely. I do not. I was.
Food and beverage right now, the work is very vulnerable. The ecosystem of food and beverage is vulnerable
I don't
right
know if
now.
I'm going to get myself into trouble, but I'm going to try it anyway. So I went to pick up sandwiches from Bagby's yesterday for the office. Love going to Bagby's on the downtown mall. The gentleman that owns it is
Yeah.
an
And
awesome.
his son is right next to him.
And his son is right. It's a wonderful family thing. And I went in there, this me being me. Hey, how you doing? I need to, order these sandwiches and all this stuff. And he goes, look, Keith, it's going to take about an extra 10 or 15 minutes. I'm short-staffed.
Yeah.
And he said to me that, I just went through 18 months and now I'm dealing with this. I don't know if I want to do this any longer. And it made me think of a conversation you brought up on Monday. And I said, please, hang in there, man. Hang in there. Hang in there. Don't give up now.
What did I bring up on Monday? Well, that
brought
was
up
the answer.
You brought up on Monday about some of the businesses that you're trying to sell,
Uh-huh.
right? That
Yeah.
they were, hey, you went through all this. Is this really the time?
Oh, me saying this to them.
Yeah.
So here's where I'm getting at.
I thought that was an insightful thing you said.
Here's where I'm getting at is you have people, humans, in food and beverage that are uncertain about their work. You have people that are realtors that if they don't have inventory to sell, stock, pool, repertoire, whatever the hell the word we're using is, they can't do business. You have
We're
mortgage
not using
demand at a
inventory.
22-year low right now. 22-year low for mortgage demand. Did you hear that, Judah? 22-year low for mortgage demand. Look at all these spaces or verticals of employment that are out there. And look at how many are just like uncertain or vulnerable or on shaky ground. Like what if we don't start tapering down, or if we don't start managing some of these headwinds, like the
But how are you
fuel,
gonna do that?
the cost of goods, the gas, this war, I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
Like these verticals of employment are going to get worse and more shaky and more vulnerable.
I think they've been heading in this direction for a long time. I mean, if you look at housing, people used to be able to have one person working a job, and you could buy a house and
Yeah, but
What you did, literally you.
Yeah, but
that was not something that I did on my own. The point that I'm making is that 60 years ago you could
that I agree with.
you could have one person working a job, you could buy a house,
But that hasn't been
you could
that.
pay for your
Judah,
family.
that has not been that way.
Everything has been going up in price except for what we're getting paid.
I mean, we talked about on Monday, right? I don't know how my son-in-law and my daughter. I mean, $4,000 a month just in daycare.
Well, and his debt service payment on the
His home
yeah.
was, you can't touch anything underneath there with a 5, 6, or 8 in front of it. On that end of it, is a young couple just married. You've got to do two couples. But Judah, when Yona and I came down here, we were fortunate to start our own businesses, but we were both working in order to raise enough money to go ahead and pay the mortgages and all that stuff. It's part of why. Frankly, it's part of why I didn't take my workman's compensation the first time around, because it was $1,800 a year or whatever the heck the number was back in 1992. And ultimately, it cost me a lot of money and a lot of stuff.
So if folks get out of selling real estate, which we predict that's going to happen,
I think
if folks get out of serving tables, food, which we think that's going to happen, right? If folks get out of hospitality, because we think that's going to happen, if they get out of the field of live music, events, tourism, which we think is going to happen, where are they going to go to work? What kind of work are they going to do?
I think eventually those things will come back, but we're just in a extremely troubled period where people are looking at the last 2 years when what do they say? The American people on average, well, not on average, the American people lost something like, I don't know what it was, $60 billion in the last 2 years, but guess where that money went? It went to the billionaires, the people that are the Jeff Bezoses and the Elon Musks, and people are looking at like this. It's almost like the water going out before a tsunami. Look at all this money.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the people that are the people that are out of the market for jobs right now. I think they're all looking at this mess that we've got going on in this country and thinking, how do I keep up? And if you can't keep up, like I've said it before, I think people are pooling their resources, living together, and staying in people's
that's
basements.
interesting. We talked about that on Monday. There was an article in the New York Times that's what they were happening. People are starting to roommate up within rooms, right? One particular room. Look, I don't. The one thing I know for sure, stuff is always changing, right? And part of this was somewhat of a modification of a Dr. King quote, right? Dreamers kind of walk around with their eyes closed. Visionaries walk around with their eyes open, right? So there's opportunities out here in a shifting market what
are the opportunities?
Well,
what's the new fields of work?
Yeah. Well,
what are people pursuing? Highest level of education cost to go to college in the history of America right now.
Yeah.
If someone wants to reinvent themselves and go to work.
How come we don't have more trade schools?
If someone wants to reinvent themselves and go to work, what are they going to do? How are they going to afford it? They just took off 2.5 years with this pandemic because they didn't work. What are they going to do?
Yeah, well,
the barrier of entry has never been greater to finding or transitioning into a new career than it is right now.
Yeah, so my oldest daughter is a tradesperson. She learned a trade. We were fortunate enough to send her to a school to go ahead and learn her trade, but she does very, very well on that end of it. So, if I was talking to a young person right now, depending on what they want to do in their lives, I think the point you're trying to make is unless you're a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and even some of them are getting I talk to my son-in-law, doctors don't make as much as they used to make these days. But, you can go out and become a skilled plumber, a licensed plumber, and you can make as much money as a doctor.
But that's not happening.
And I think the problem is that if you look at, go look at...
I agree with you about that.
Go look at job openings. And what you see is,
it's not those jobs.
It's what you've always seen is they want 4 years of experience.
Right.
They want you to know how to do X, Y, and Z. And someone looking at those coming from a different
screwed.
A different job is like, how am I going to get that job?
Chicken and egg situation.
It doesn't matter if nobody's applying for that job. The person looking at that job ad is saying, how can I ever get that job?
They can't. They will never be able to.
And so it's something.
Never be able to. Because for someone to reinvent themselves now and find another path of professional pursuit, they would be reinventing themselves in the worst inflationary time of American history. So they would be taking time off.
I wouldn't say it in history.
Oh, the data backs it up.
In history?
Yeah,
Ever.
the data backs it up.
I thought it was in the last 40 years.
If you reinvent yourself now, you would have to pause earning, go get knowledge for the other career path, and while you're pausing earning, gas is the highest it's ever been, groceries are the highest it's ever been, prime, and look at what the interest rates are doing right now. It's the worst time to reinvent yourself ever.
Okay, so what are we supposed to do? Put our head in the sand?
My question for you is,
not try?
What are the folks that are going to reinvent themselves do? That's the point of this conversation. What are they going to do? What field of business? Hardship
I don't think the three
hardship breeds innovation. And
Oh.
out of this hardship, some kind of innovation is going to happen from COVID,
Sure.
from this freaking inflationary time, from this
Sure.
geopolitical crisis. What is the innovation that's going to come from
There
this
is
crap?
always when I mean by opportunity, it's innovation. I don't know what it is, but somebody's going to come up with some opportunity or some innovation in it. But look, this may be the worst inflationary time in history. I look at it a little bit differently. I lived through the 70s. I was a young person at that point in time, but I remember, we literally didn't have food in the shelves, right? And we had, total of 5 brothers and sisters on that side. We literally didn't have food, right? And we had to make very hard decisions to do that. We didn't have gas. You had to wait online to get gas. You had alternating days back and forth and that kind of great stuff. So none of this is ultimately new. It's just different, right? And it's impacting people in a different way because, it's interesting. I was
This is happening out of a pandemic.
Oh yeah, which is last time that happened was in 1918.
Happening out of a pandemic.
Sure.
That's the difference.
Sure.
We're also much more connected, so I think for a lot of people,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
if
get
you're if you're even slightly connected to the news, then you're
Brainwashed, inundated,
Well,
bombarded.
You're seeing gloom and doom.
But we're connected digitally. We're not so connected personally like we used to be anymore.
Right. And
Right.
that's why I've said in the past that I think we need to get back into the habit of being in community with each other.
So I don't have the exact number, but
How are you going to do that when housing is so expensive?
No, it's not about housing. It's about looking out for the people that around you.
Well-
It's about knowing your neighbors and knowing when they are in trouble so that you can help.
Or having
because if
family.
we're not like that, then like you said, we're not as connected as we used to be.
we
And-
have the same we have that problem right now. My daughter got sick, right? Wasn't COVID, but she was sick and couldn't take care of certain things. My wife and I couldn't get up there to help them do that because we were 8, 9, 10 hours away. The time when we lost everything we had and I broke my back, my mother and father lived 3 miles away from us, right? We always had somebody close by to help. You're seeing a lot of this disconnected, but what it's interesting, I don't have the exact stat, and if Neil is watching or somebody
He is watching.
somebody who can get on a computer a lot faster than I can, this multi-generational housing is picking back up again.
Daniel Pettit, we're in a situation where more and more families are going to move in one house because of costs and they have
Yeah,
to.
that's exactly right. And that it's 2 reasons. It's cost. There's no inventory. It's probably 3. It's also because they can work together.
So take it a step further. If these financial circumstances and economic circumstances are creating a scenario of multi-generational households,
Which is not new, by the way.
where many families live in one house, many generations live under one roof. Look at the IRPI. IRPI is a good example of this.
But I grew up around that. It was always that way. My mother's Italian side of the family.
Then if they're living under one roof, does that mean that then filling these jobs won't be as big a priority? Because they're sharing the burden of housing overhead?
I think it's already
But
happening.
they still need a job.
Well, the point he's making is they're multi-generational housing, which is allowing them the financial freedom to not work
So look
or
at
to
it.
significantly cut back. Isn't that what you're saying?
So look at it this.
If 1 or 2 people in a large group have enough to cover the cost of housing and food, then they can live in community with people who are struggling and help
So
out.
if Yona and I didn't have our businesses, right? We were at a certain point, which we're not there, and whatever. We can move up. Not that, God forbid, I do it, but we could move up to Connecticut, live with my daughter and son-in-law, and save them $4,000 a month because we take care of the kids.
So how many folks are doing that? We had Amanda Spagoni talking about this on Real
Yeah,
Talk
I
on a
remember.
Monday. How Amanda and her 3 kids, she said this herself, straightforward. I respected her vulnerability. She said, I'm divorced. I have 3 kids. I had to move in with my parents. They live in Forest Lakes.
Yep.
And when I got divorced and moved in with my mom and dad with my 3 kids, they financially helped carry the load. And then as they started aging and got to retirement, she's now carrying the financial
Helping
load
them.
for her parents and her
Sure.
3 kids. And they're all raising the family
That's
together.
not new. That was always done like that for generations.
I understand that's not new, but the difference with what you keep saying and the circumstances we're in today is there's humongous job openings that aren't
Yeah.
being filled.
Yeah.
There's mom and pop businesses that shut down because they can't get staff.
Well, you're
There's-
you're
and I
having
think
a
another-
conversation with
and I
the
think
with the
another-
local guys, thinking, "Hey, I'm
There's
thinking the same
literally
thing."
people coming to me to sell their businesses, and one of their main motivation to sell their businesses
done.
is they can't get people to work in them.
I'm done. Yeah.
They literally, that's what everyone is saying.
Yeah.
I can't get people to work
Yeah.
in them.
Yeah.
I need to sell because I can't work every shift. That's what these people are saying.
Yeah, and I think another part of it is that yes, that it's nothing new, but I think now a lot of people are reverting to that out of necessity rather than
Well, but it was
choosing-
necessity back in the day too, right? That's what you did, right? You couldn't afford a rent apartment. It wasn't any. The only difference is this pandemic and the
Yeah.
impact that it has
It's a
done on it.
significant difference.
And I'm just making a statement that if you look back in the 30s and the 40s, right, that's what that was done, right? And then in the 50s, the advent of Levittown and all this kind of great stuff where there was cheap housing and abundant housing, they started to move out that way. But look, this is a real estate show, right? We're talking employment, which is a great part of that process. But, I think the difference here, and maybe I'm hopeful that maybe there's a groundswell going on here that, and I'd love to get some NIMBY folks on here to really get them to explain to them why they take the position that they take and kind of debate that conversation. But there seems to be a swelling of hey, we need more inventory, and there seems to be from a I may be wrong, from a political side of it or regulatory side of it, I'm hopeful anyway, that there's going to be allowed to get some more units in the ground. My fear on that, by the way, is I think it's going to be too little too late.
Oh, it's way too little too late.
Yeah.
Fear, that's 100% what's happening.
Yeah, too little,
100% what's happening.
Too little,
We
too
had Supervisor Diantha McKeel on Real Talk with Keith Smith and specifically asked the question, can we expand the growth area from its current 5% of Albemarle County? And of that 5% growth area of Albemarle County, it's commercial and residential, not just residential.
Yeah.
And her response on the show, documented on the microphone, I'm not going to vote to expand the 5% developmental area in Albemarle County until the current 5% is maxed out.
But there's also some new discussion about they're re-looking at that, right? And I think a lot of it has to do with the conversations we're having. But Neil will chime in. But there seems to be some little bit of meetings I'm part of and reading such things that Neil is putting out.
But there's 3 positions for the Board of Supervisors that come up for re-election.
In Albemarle County.
In Albemarle County.
Yeah.
In today is June and November, and it's a difference of 5, in less than 17 months.
Yep.
The entire make of the board changes.
Yep.
The entire make of the board. Donna Price is not running again. We don't know if Ann Malik is going to run again. We know Steve Harvey is. We don't know if B. Lepisto Kirtley is going to run again. The entire board is going to shift with this makeup.
So here's the political reality of that, or the practical reality of that, not the political reality of that. Even if there's a shift of the board 17 months around for pro-growth, pro-expanding that, it's going to take a substantial amount of time just to work through the system.
No doubt.
To get it. So even if we're years out. So I think I think if you get Diantha back, we get Diantha back on the show and kind of ask that question again. I think the question is get it, you should be thinking about growing this growth area, but what can you do to expedite housing within the current growth area? They need to start making the process a lot easier. And
Have we
faster.
seen any
I mean,
indication that's going to happen?
No. I mean, heck, there's a letter sitting in front of you that about Charlottesville and NDS, right, that is being circulated amongst real estate professionals, development professionals, engineers. Basically, the basics of the letter is, hey guys, you got a problem here. You can't get anything done in Charlottesville.
Yeah.
You can't get permits done. You can't get plans approved. You can't do anything. Well, hold it. Time out. If I've got 5...
Judah, you know very close hand about this.
Well, not personally. Well,
Family.
Kind of personally. My dad was building houses, and they were basically they
Sorry
had.
to hear that, by the way.
I don't know much.
Dude, listen to this.
I don't know much about. They had like I think it was something like 1 point something billion in bonds that were held by the city.
Sure.
And the city just kept not releasing them. So their company was basically, we've got people that we owe money to that we can't pay because the city won't release the bonds.
So-
we've got housing that we can't finish because they won't release the bonds. There was some goofy stuff about some drainage, something or other was not done correctly, or it was like an inch off or something like that, and so everything was
That's what
held
that letter
back,
talks about.
and the company is basically going under, and then on the
You
other
hear that?
Oh, yeah.
Going under the company.
Yeah, and so it's impactful. It's why this...
This is Dad's company.
And off air, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about that, but see what I can do to help. But the reality of it is, and I want to be there to help Judah.
well, at this point, I think it's
It's a moot
past.
point.
Yeah, this was
that's just
going on for years, and I think they finally just gave up.
that's just wrong. That's just flat out wrong. And in essence, what this letter is saying, I think there's some individuals at the city level just don't really care. I
I
don't.
really hope that's not the case. I think it's more.
I cannot believe that Judah's father and company did not sit down with individuals and say, if you don't release,
Oh, he did.
If you don't release this, you understand what's going to happen. I have the same. We have land trust, right? Smaller example, right? There's a $18,000 bond for Nassau Street. Project's been done for 2 years. I can't get it released.
Yeah.
This is the
can't
this is the unfortunate
get it
collateral damage
released.
of emotional volatility atop the jurisdictional totem pole for the last 6 or 8 years.
So the people at the
And
county.
it's calmed down.
So this is at the city, not the county. I apologize. So this is at the city, and they're not actually happy with me because I outsmarted them. I actually did it in an insurance bond, and I stopped paying. We stopped paying the bond. I'm not going to pay it. So now they've got to work with us, otherwise the bond isn't going to get renewed.
We'll get to some comments. There's many
Oh, I'm
comments
sure.
here. Many comments. Danny O'Day, your comments are excellent. I'm going to read all of Danny's, then I'll read to Keith's or Neil's, then I'll get to Travis's and all these other ones. Danny, doesn't really matter what it's called, recession or whatever, adjustment. When families can't afford dinner, it impacts people.
That's the point I'm trying
you
to
were
make.
making.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
Keith Smith. Danny O'Day also says this. This absolutely is the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night. This feels a lot like post-2008. We kind of papered over the crash. We didn't really improve the material conditions of the average American's life. Their wages stagnated while prices kept rising. The stock market improved, but most economists would agree that we did not really do a lot to solidify the lives of most workers. Seems a lot like that in 2008. We found out that our walls were full of termites and decided to put up some wallpaper and considered it taken care of. He also adds these comments, 2 more. Building off of what Judah said, according to the Economist, Americans, 750 billionaires gained 960 billion in 2021. The bottom 90% of Americans lost a collective 950 billion.
That's a pretty even distribution, redistribution, I would think.
I would say that's the definition of that. And he adds, Keith is right that it's been done before, but what he's missing is that we've completely restructured our society, both in terms of social structure and literal physical infrastructure, in such a way that to revert is incredibly difficult, if not nearly impossible.
Thank you for the correction. Yeah, you're right. 100% right. The only point I was trying to make is that some version of it was done before.
Neil Williamson's comments. He's the president of the Free Enterprise Forum. all around great guy, and I enjoyed running into him on the downtown mall yesterday before he was locked out of a city council meeting at City Hall and taking selfies in front of the building.
Yeah.
We love you, Neil Williams.
Don't take it personal, Neil.
I love you, Neil Williamson. Businesses have been hampered in the current environment. Did you see Neil's post about being locked out of the city council meeting?
No, I
It
don't
was
think I did.
hilarious.
Yeah, but I don't. He only got like the
I
top
know, he
half
didn't get
of
his full
He
face
didn't
in
get his
there.
full. He got the
I know,
top
he only
half of
got
his
half
head.
his face.
He
I think he was trying to get the American flag in the building.
I think he was trying to get rid of it. All I got was the shine on the top.
I thought it
of
was
his head.
hilarious.
Neil is the
love
man.
Neil so much. He says businesses have been hampered in the current environment, not least by a shortage of workers that has left nearly 2 job openings for every available worker. He also adds this for the panel. This is from 2021 data. 1 in 4 live in multi-generational households in this country.
Yeah. What year was that?
This is 2021.
21. Yeah.
Travis Hackworth, I wonder, do we start to see a shift back to neighborhood communities and businesses? I hope we do. I'm a huge proponent of locally owned businesses, neighborhood communities, and shopping local. My fear is the locally owned businesses, many we represent, and with our advertising agency, they're getting pushed out of business.
Yeah. So that's this live, work, shop proposal, which is great. But you got to get it approved, right? You got to. The jurisdictions have to allow this to happen, right? And again, what is old is new again. Like where I grew up in Brooklyn, that's what I didn't go out of my neighborhood because everybody was living in the same building, you were shopping in the same area, and everybody was working within the same neighborhood on that end of it. That's how it was.
And it's also, guys, it's very clear. Katie Pearl, we'll get to your comments in a matter of moments here. It's very clear, and this is an unfortunate trend. When inflation peaks and spikes and gets out of control like it is now, and when American households have their dollars and their pennies pinched like they are now, they do not have as strong as a commitment to shopping local, and it becomes much more of a commodity play.
Sure.
You have to stretch the dollar.
You have to.
And it's the locally owned businesses that suffer because they don't have the purchasing power to pass savings on to customers.
Right.
So customers then start big box shopping and not locally owned
Well, they
shopping.
changed their buying habits. I was in Food Lion on Sunday out at Lake Monticello because I did a quick little shopping in the morning, and I was actually having Mom and Dad over, and I was making some meatballs and spaghetti, and I went in the pasta aisle, and there was no pasta. It was literally no pasta. And, my assumption was at the time was because I looked around and the more expensive stuff in the aisle was there, but the pasta that you could, buy a couple of pounds pretty inexpensively was gone. The sauce was gone.
We have to make as strong a commitment as we ever have to shopping locally through this time if we want these businesses to survive.
So I think
that means spending more money.
So absolutely. So I think you're advocating what we were advocating in the beginning of the pandemic. Support local. Local. We should always support local. I very rarely, you'll very rarely ever see me with a Starbucks cup of coffee. I always go buy local, right? It's just the way I operate. I'm interested to hear what Katie has to say.
Katie Pearl, Keller Williams' finest, a Cubana of tremendous proportions. She says, I would love it if my parents moved in to help with the kids. They are living the dream in Florida, though, so it's a tough sell. Katie, I concur. I would love if my mother-in-law and father-in-law moved down from expensive Long Island to Charlottesville. In fact, friend of the program, you know her as well, Marina Ringstrom had a listing that was in the mid-4s in our particular neighborhood.
Oh my God.
A cottage.
Lasted about 13 seconds.
2 bedroom, 1 bath.
Yep.
It was on the market for less than a day.
13 seconds.
Less than a day. I would have loved if they had taken that property, that house, or bought that. Dan Pettit, side note, after listening to Real Talk with Keith Smith, when there was a planning commissioner and a board of supervisor on the show, he says, Dan does, I think Green is headed in the right direction in their communication with county people. I would love for Green to put an elementary school in the middle of a large subdivision like Woodbrook did in Albemarle County. walk to school. I think Greene County can do this. Less driving, less school buses. If you put the school right in the middle of the neighborhood, that's from Mustache Dan Pettit,
So,
who has one hell of a forehand. On the
So
town.
if Katie or Dan can get in front of Paragon, I looked yesterday, a little bit of information. We're looking for a home in Greene County for a buyer, single family detached. There was only one home under the price of $400,000. And that may have changed in the last 24 hours, but there was only one home
in Greene
County.
In Greene County.
Well, we talked about this, and I've changed my philosophy, right? Excuses only communicate, right? I think I'm wrong. I don't think Zion's Crossroads is the next place where we're going to have.
Greene County.
I absolutely think it's Greene County now. I think the politics is there. I think the now that they've got the control of their own water system, I think they've got the infrastructure.
They're very pro-business.
They're solving their internet issue on an aggressive format on it. I think you're going to start seeing some pretty sizable movement of new homes out in Greene County. I'm kind of coming off of Zion's Crossroads a little bit, and that's some inside baseball that I know what's going on between Louisa and Fluvanna County, and I'm not so sure they're
A
going to.
little bit of friction. We'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. Neil Williamson shares a link from the Free Enterprise Forum. The headline, Greene Board of Supervisors turns down 17-acre proffer for new elementary school in Ruckersville. The byline, the talented and enterprising Brent Wilson. Just a
so that
fantastic
was
field officer.
I think that was part of the 55 and over project that they were trying to get approved, and I'll tell you, I think since then the politics and the thinking has changed. I think if that project would have come up now, we'd have a better chance of getting approved, in my opinion.
So why don't we wind down the show with this? If we have massive reinventions of professional careers, where are they going to go to? Where are these people going to go to? Where are they going to work? What lines of business are they going to work in?
Well, it's more than that. It says where are they going to go to work, and where they're going to go to work to make enough money to afford a home or afford rent.
Yeah.
Right?
And what does this community turn into? I mean, it's clearly turning into, like, if you think about it with it's almost like a Danish. If you look at the Danish, you got the jelly and the sweet part. The core of the Danish is the city of Charlottesville. And that jelly in the core of the Danish is extremely wealthy and
You
homogeneous.
need to stop it. I'm hungry.
It's extremely wealthy and homogeneous. The rest of the Danish
Yeah.
is not so homogeneous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned this on Monday when I was up in Connecticut. I had a half a dozen phone calls, and these are folks that are nurses, cops, firemen, teachers, right? On this listing that we have for the land trust, and actually trying to run them. We can't even help some of these folks. I mean, this is just out of control. And it's interesting, and we're going to have a new construction folks on Friday, which I'm excited about, talking about what some future projects are coming up, and from their perspective of this shift of the market going on that end of it. But the reality of it is, where is I had this woman in tears, right? I couldn't help her. Talk about helpless. You know what? When I lost everything I had a plan, right? I knew how we could go from losing everything we had to where we are today. I knew we could do it because we controlled it. I can't help this woman. And there is nothing, this wasn't helpless. Never felt helpless here. Felt a little sorry for myself for a short period of time, but I never felt helpless. Talk about a helpless feeling. When you have a woman with a child crying, I can't afford my rental anymore, I can't go anyplace, that's a helpless feeling.
Travis Hackworth watching the program, he's saying if Charlottesville cannot accommodate you, come to Danville. We can. If CVO won't give you the permits, come on down to Danville. We'll make it easy for you, and we need housing of all types. That's the king of Danville.
There you go.
Travis Hackworth. Danville is appealing.
But that's what's going to happen.
That is what's going to happen.
That's exactly what's going to happen. And it's interesting because that letter is just sitting in front of you. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to do a project.
Right here.
Nobody wants to do a project in Charlottesville anyway. I will tell you.
Friend of the program, Oliver Kutner, said to me, he said, you know what? City of Charlottesville makes it so difficult to do stuff around here. Guess where I'm going?
Someplace else.
Lynchburg.
Yeah, someplace else.
I
Lynchburg.
saw this, and I thought I'd share it. It's something from somebody in Charlottesville who's talking about the housing affordability issue, and you can't see it, but so I'll read it for you and for those that are listening. It says,
Plus, the whole reading thing's a little struggle for me too. But thank you.
In
Does it
this-
have pictures?
it's on screen.
Has it got pictures?
It's on screen. Look at the screen, everybody. Look at the screen.
It's all letters. In this house, we believe in affordable housing, unless the project is too big, or too close to family homes, or changes the character of the neighborhood, or the developer makes a profit. And why does it have to look so boring?
So that the
That's
answer.
the NIMBY mentality.
Well, I'll tell you the one thing that irks me in the NIMBY, and it's really, I'll be honest with you, the thing that I respect people to have their opinion up until this one sentence comes out of their mouth. And it comes out, and they don't realize they're saying it.
What is it?
We don't want them here. In essence, that's what they're saying, and that just burns me to no end on that. That angers me when they have that. I get you can have your opinion and all that kind of great stuff, and at some point, and I've actually tried to ask a few people that support NIMBY to come on here, and they won't
Who would come on and
go up against us.
well, or just take the NIMBY
Yeah.
stance on a talk show?
Yeah, well, you know, if they feel that
There's
there's
one thing, NIMBY is one thing. Another thing altogether is saying, let's hope the infrastructure supports the density that's coming with the rooftops. Okay, NIMBY is a completely different take than
No.
infrastructure.
Well, that's one. Infrastructure is one of the. If you go traditionally, and it's become something very, very different now, and on all that, the moniker is very different, and the fact that YIMBY has backfilled some of this stuff, yes, in my backyard, and it's I'm afraid if you really take a look at the two sides of the conversation, it's really what's kind of going on in the housing market. You have the NIMBY folks are kind of my age and up. The YIMBY stuff is your guys' age on that end of it.
Well, yeah, because they're pleading and begging to get in a house, and they
Wait,
can't.
so it's interesting because I had a conversation with a couple of folks about this, and my response to it was, well, hold it, time out. You got your slice of the American dream. You got your slice of wealth building. It's kind of like IGM. I got mine, but it's not okay for you to do it. It's kind of like I don't want those people.
It's
here.
even
not-
worse. I'm
Yeah.
seeing apathy with boomers who are pretty much
towards people my age.
no apathy from boomers
Oh, got
pretty
it.
much saying to about their kids.
Yeah.
Johnny and Susie will never be able to afford to live in our town, and
Yeah.
they're just okay with it.
Yeah. Well.
They just don't even care. They're just, it is what it is.
So-
when the boomers become apathetic about their children living in their community, that's concerning.
We didn't get to the 7 fundamentals. So
No, but we had a great show.
We had a great show, and one of the things I did want to talk a little bit about, and we'll save it for another show, is a question I get all the time about foreclosures. I had some historical data on that, but we'll save that for another show.
I'll close with DOD's comment. Denny O'Day, big fan of walkable communities. Why is Albemarle High School, Jewett Middle School, and Greer Elementary all down a narrow 2-lane road with no sidewalk or bike lane? I was lucky enough to be able to walk to school when I was in elementary school. It allowed my mom to have a job and save money or take care of my younger siblings at home without having to drive or take the bus every single day. Dan Pettit, I hope you have a great day as well. Sounds like you're biking Riverview Park. If you'd like to see one of the most dynamic and esteemed listeners and viewers of Real Talk, it's Dan Pettit. He's on a bike at Riverview Park in about an hour.
Nice.
Strawberries,
I
and
tried
look at the light.
it didn't work.
I pinched the bridge of my nose.
You pinched the bridge of your nose?
That works for me.
Yeah, well, I followed the lead of the genius here.
Strawberries,
It
and
didn't
look
work.
at the light.
Strawberry. Look, this was great.
Dynamic show.
I love our Batman and Robin and Alfred shows.
Alfred was in the mix.
And it's amazing. I spent a half a day yesterday prepping all stuff, and I love it when we don't get to it.
We talked about your
Yeah.
your recovery.
Yeah. But there was a couple other things I wanted to get to, but I'll just kind of end it on this. I constantly get asked why I do this show, and because it makes me better at what I do, because I have to read and I have to be prepared.
Give them a tease on Friday's program.
Yeah, like I said earlier, we're going to have Amanda Lamont from Stanley Martin Homes, and we're going to have Christopher Bremett from Bramante Homes, and we're going to talk about the O shift that's going on. So if you're interested in local new construction, this is what we're going to talk about on that. And it's been two back-to-back shows, the three amigos here, but I'm looking forward to getting back to the panel discussions.
Court time for Dan Pettit potentially in the future. He's on the bike at the park now. Friday, Amanda Lamont, Stanley Martin, Christopher Bremett from Bramante Homes. If you want to hear about the plight, the trials, and the very few tribulations of new construction, Friday's show is the show you should listen to.
So the reason I was excited about it,
And you got big and boutique and custom.
Well, custom and production, right?
Yeah.
So what's the difference between the two? So we're going to do a little bit of construction 101 too on that end of it.
That's a great topic. Friday's show is going to be awesome. Keith Smith, you crushed it.
Jerry, thank you for doing that as always. I love it.
The show airs on the I Love Seville network, but it's archived on realtalkwithkeithsmith.com.
What an awesome logo,
An
huh?
incredible logo and a very smartly and efficiently designed website, if I do say so myself.
And particularly when somebody stays out of it.
realtalkwithkeithsmith.com. Yes, clients that are listening to the program, we love you. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
We'll leave it at that.
you pushed me for a while, but I do listen to you now.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sweetheart, did you hear what Keith Smith had to say?
No, don't.
Remember Keith Smith has-
You were trying to end it nice, and look
Bill
at this.
McGenzie, hello. Judah Wickhauer, you did a hell of a job. Keith, you crushed it today. This is the
Thank you.
Wednesday edition of Real Talk presented by Yes Realty Partners and Ross Mortgage. Scott Mortgage Morris will be back next Wednesday, and we hope he's wearing his suntan lotion so he does not burn.
Or
right
it brings some fish for us.
now. Or he brings some fish for us. That would be nice. Keith,
That would be nice.
Oh, yeah.
Judah, Jerry, Real Talk with
Judah,
Keith Smith.
thanks, man.
So long, everybody. Take care. That was dynamic.
I had fun, man. I've got a 11:30 Zoom call.